years of persistence, tears and a lot of government lobbying, Sydney finally has a standalone Dragway. Hello and welcome to one of the finest motorsport venues in the world, Western Sydney International Dragway. It's the grand opening of their $30 million complex.
And it's been over 6 long years since Sydney has had championship drag racing, and they have turned out in force. 25,000 people have crammed in here to see all the Group 1 categories headed by those awesome 7,000 horsepower top fuel dragsters. And of course, there's plenty of the country's best racers and one from America, Mike Dunn, keen to win this inaugural event.
So if you love your motorsport, folks, at over 500k an hour, boy oh boy, have you come to the right place. The grand opening of Western Sydney's International Dragway, and as the motto says, come along for the fastest ride of your life.
Just one look at this complex is enough to convince anyone that no matter how long the struggle and how hard it's been, it's all worth it. And although this colossus of steel and concrete is due to the efforts of many, there are a few for which we can all be very grateful.
The project's taken about 6.5 years to actually get off the ground. Myself, Jim Reed and David Cook has been probably the 3 people at the centre of it. We've had to go through a lot of government process in order to justify why drag racing and drag racing as a motorsport requires a future in Sydney.
We watched this thing grow from when they first started scraping, when it was lines on a bit of paper, and then they started scraping around in the dirt.
Well, these people spoke to me and I was mindful of what they said, that there was no facility in Western Sydney, no drag racing facility in this area or in New South Wales, where they've got in greater metropolitan Sydney, golf courses, tennis courts, 125 swimming pools and nothing but drag racing, and kids doing this on the street and getting killed. And I was persuaded to the argument. I then spoke to the Premier and he was persuaded to the argument and gave it the go-ahead. And then I have to say the saboteurs began, and it was a constant attempt to sabotage the project by the public service, by bureaucrats. It was just one dogfight after another. But at the end of the day, Premier Carr stuck in, and Maurice Yemmer, when he became Sports Minister, was outstanding. And then with the knowledge of people like Jim Reed and David Cook and Tony Buke, eventually the whole thing came to pass. But it's been, one has to say, it's just been a phenomenal battle against obstructionists. And yet you come here, there were 36,000 people here yesterday, there'll be 40,000 here tonight.
Dollar value community-wise, to give you an idea, earlier in the week we found out that for the last month you couldn't book a motel between Penrith and the Olympic side. We never investigated any further than that. So just as far as, you know, the local industry benefiting by this racetrack, there's just one example. There's several small businesses that build, you know, products for various race cars and a lot of aftermarket stuff. They're booked out for 18 months.
The equipment assembled here would be worth over $200 million. This will support over 120 industries in the area, and it means that the centre of Sydney, Western Sydney, have a facility that's multifunctional. So they won't have to go to Homebush or to the entertainment centre, for example, for a rock concert. They can have that here. This is an outdoor facility for that as well, and it's just a phenomenal achievement, and it's a very exciting day.
They were patient because we had to get it right. We had to resolve the probity issues, the land use issues, the financial issues, but they put a strong case. We're here today. Jim tells me it's the best facility in Australia, perhaps in the world, and I think it's going to be a great boon.
We had probably 26,000 people on Friday and yesterday. And today they started pouring in here at 8 o'clock. So it was drag racing alive and well in Sydney or what?
In the 6 years of drag racing competition at Eastern Creek Raceway, no one was able to break 300 miles per hour. However, in the second day of qualifying of the Summer Nationals, Mike Dunn and the Santos Cranes dragster became the first to achieve the magic mark in New South Wales. Dunn's 490 at 301 miles per hour put him into the #1 qualifying position. Later that evening, he would set another new record, becoming the first car to run into the 480s, stopping the clock with a 482 at 307 miles per hour. Not to be outdone, Johnny Cowen in the Rocket K&N Top Fuel Dragster returned an even quicker and faster pass, stealing the #1 qualifying position with a 481 at 309 miles per hour, or just under 500 kilometres an hour. So at the end of one of the greatest nights of Top Fuel qualifying, Johnny Cowen sits in the #1 spot, ahead of Mike Dunn, with Bob Shepherd taking up the final place with a 5:36.
Well, the drag racing dream has become a reality, and isn't Sydney celebrating? Not without the help of some political lobbying, Sydney radio man Alan Jones and Premier Bob Carr.
This represents the finest drag racing facility in the world.
Here it is. It's your facility. Go for it. Thank you.
Huge support here for the Carr government's wonderful initiative in getting this venue off the ground. And time to cut the ribbon. Former Minister of Sport, current Minister of Sport as well, Bob Carr, Western Sydney is open. Well, the atmosphere here is truly electric as they make some last-minute adjustments to the Jim Reed dragster. Here is Luke Shepherd, the Gulf Western Oils entry, a rookie racer, got the Gulf Western Oil sponsorship, and I guess it helps if Bob's your uncle.
Yes, the nephew of Bob Shepherd as Jim Reed completes his burnouts in what is some very, very hot conditions. It's 40 degrees in the stands and around about 60 degrees C on track.
Look at Alan Jones.
Alan Jones puts his earplugs in. Very, very loud, 120 decibels from these fuel cars. Just have a look at the onboard shot there. You can see all the fuel lines and the wires off the back of this top fuel car. There is so many lines and fuel nozzles and hoses that feed this nitromethane into these cars. Jim Reed, though, how important is it for him to win this event?
I've got to be honest with you, it was more important to make the event happen and see the people out there happy, and I got to run up and down, and that was satisfying enough. And you know, maybe it's someone else's turn now to win a lot of events.
He's the fastest 60-year-old I know, that's for sure. And whilst he might say that it's more important for the event, and I believe him, he still wouldn't mind knocking this deal off.
Well, certainly, Jim's been the man there from day dot. He's put his own time, his own money in. He's the one that has driven this project, and this really is his crowning moment to see this event up and running.
In front of a full house, Reed up against the youngster Luke Shepherd. Good start.
Shepherd has his nose in front. Reed starts to smoke the tyres, and he is not going to go through the semi-finals. Luke Shepherd, a 5:36, 3:82, but Jim Reed, the chutes are not out yet. A lot of fire on the chute packs, and he is going to take on the gravel pit and maybe the catch net.
What a dramatic result for Jim Reed, the first ever event here at the Wizard. And flames at the back just melted down the chutes.
Yeah, when these cars start to smoke the tyres, they do what is called dropping cylinders, and they load up on fuel and they can torch the cylinder heads. Now, Jim Reed, you see on the replay, starts to smoke the tyres. He should have got off the throttle and got back on it. The tyres would have gripped and he would have run down Shepherd. However, he stayed on it, it loaded the thing up, leaned out a couple of cylinders, torched the heads. That's what all the flame and fire is. Now you can see that the chutes have come out, but there's so much fire and flame on the chutes and the chute pack that they had already pretty much burnt and had holes in them. And Jim Reed hit the catch net, hit it very hard indeed.
Hard work to concentrate on being both a promoter of this event and race a top fuel car as well.
Have a look from this top angle. You can see the brown haze coming out of the exhaust pipe. That is oil. This thing is revving so hard as Jim stays on the throttle. Luke Shepherd, congratulations. The 20-year-old defeats Australia's most successful top fuel racer in the first round. But unfortunately, Jim Reed, it's a fairy tale to have the race meeting, but it's a nightmare to hit the net and go out so early.
Well, don't the crowd appreciate just the opportunity to come out this incredible venue. The Gulf Western Oil Company are so big behind drag racing this year. A lot of companies, I think, are seeing what's happening out here, Nathan, and going, we're going to be a part of this, and big time.
Yes, Gulf Western Oils have had some association with Terry Sainty for some time now. Here is the first of the Sandoz Cranes top fuel dragsters, Steve Reed. Tommy Steve Reed, as he's affectionately known. And Steve has been driving for the Sandoz team for some time. Terry Sainty in qualifying on Saturday night up against Luke Shepherd put this thing in at a number 5 qualifying position with a sensational 5:22. And Saturday night's top fuel was one of the best night of racing ever seen by top fuel in this country.
There was some concern coming into the event that the new surface and the heat combined might not really be able to cope with these incredible top fuel cars, and how the guys might try and get some traction on this surface. seems to have stood up pretty well.
Yes, well, it still is very, very difficult, the conditions. The racetrack is what you call green. It doesn't have a lot of rubber down. However, the track staff here at Western Sydney International Dragway have done an incredible job. However, it still is over 60 degrees centigrade on the track surface, and that in anyone's language is very hot, and it becomes a little bit slick, a little bit greasy. The advantage top fuel cars have, however, with their advanced clutch systems, they can limit the amount of horsepower they put to the track and dance these cars down the racetrack. Reed's out. Saney's beside him. Problems for Reed. You saw the engine shut off, and Terry Saney will move into the semis. A 5.11 at 433 kilometres an hour is a personal best for the Sainty team. That is the quickest that car has ever gone.
Have a look at it again in replay. Just gets out of the hole very nicely. Reed already with trouble spinning the tyres coming off the line. And Sainty, that drags to tracking beautifully.
Yeah, not sure what happened to Tommy Steve Reed. Possibly a blow belt. The thing just seemed to die about three-quarter track. You can see there starting to hose some fuel and shut down. Terry Saney also threw the blower belt out through the lights, but a 5.11 signals the performance increase that we've seen in that car.
Here's Uncle Bob, the Turnbull Truck Centre entry, Bob Shepherd, and he's the second of the Sandos Cranes entry, Mike Dunn, who already owns a bit of history here at the Western Sydney International Dragway.
Yes, the first man to run a 300-mile-per-hour pass. He did that on Saturday night. Also on Saturday night, Bob Shepherd put this car down the racetrack to qualify with a 5.36, but just through the lights. Have a look at the flash of flame there. Torched ahead. They managed to fix the engine and get it back to eliminations.
Well, truly a great field of top fuel cars here for the weekend, and we could have had two more with the Atherton Smith team out of Queensland. They were nominated for the event, but unfortunately didn't make it down due to health problems. All eyes, I think, on Dunn this weekend. What can the American do? He's a pretty versatile competitor and a TV announcer for ESPN as well. Yes,
Mike Dunn, a very experienced racer, actually still holds one of the quickest passes in the world, a 4.494, and his top speed is 313 miles per hour. Funnily enough, the man in front of him in the quickest ETs is Andrew Cowen with a 4.490. So these cars very, very quick in America, that we still haven't really seen anyone run into the 460s in Australia yet, but the Cowen team tell me that's not far away.
And there's a little bit of rivalry between Dunn and the Cowen family, that is to say the least. The Turnbull's truck chassis entry of Bob Shepherd, closest to camera. Dunn, the Californian, as we get off the... Oh, it's all done. Right from the start, though, he smokes the tyres.
Yeah, stays on the throttle, but the thing was hazing rather than smoking. Goes 5.02 at 451 kilometres per hour. Mike Dunn moves into the semi-finals. 5.902.75 for Bob Shepherd. Not a bad pass. Have a look on the replay here. You see Dunn's car probably would have run a lot quicker had it been able to glue to the racetrack. As it got to about half track, it started to smoke the tyres. Got to remember, these things make around 7,000 horsepower when they're running right, and it's very difficult to keep that glued to the racetrack.
Here is Mr. Immaculate Johnny Cowen in the Rocket Industries K&N Autometer back top fuel dragster. This kid is a revelation. His twin brother Andrew is a gun. Yeah, instead of learning how to play cricket in the backyard, the Cowen boys learning how to belt a dragster down the strip at 400 k's.
And they do it very well indeed. Johnny Cowen, #1 qualifier with a 481. You see Jim Reed just disappearing in the background. Jim ran a strong 5.0, but it just looked like he was absolutely hosed. This car has the best of the best, and there is a new car coming. Hopefully Andrew will drive that at one of the Western Sydney events in May, and they'll have two cars, and then perhaps Andrew will return to US to run in the NHRA season.
And there is Dad Graham, attentive as always, right behind son Johnny, who has come into this sport wide open. And one of the hot favourites this weekend, there can be no doubt about that.
Solo Parts being the #1 qualifier, gives you a chance to test the car, to see how the tune-up is. Nice and straight, no tyre smoke, and a 5.03 at 470 kilometres an hour is a very good pass in these very warm conditions. Johnny and Graham will be very pleased with that. Take a look on the replay, so the car comes out very strongly. No tyre smoke, which we've seen from a couple of the other passes here today. They had this thing glued nicely, and I think that was just a perfect setup for these conditions.
Going fast is awesome, but stopping them is critical. Here's Daniel Gibson with more.
The safety record of drag racing is enviable when you consider how many cars travel down the quarter mile every year. Now, when they're travelling at over 300 mile an hour in some cases, the only thing you have to worry about is how to stop them. Parachutes are the key, and they're mandatory if drag cars travel over 140 mile per hour. To explain it a little more, let's talk to the man of the moment with his top fueler, Luke Shepherd. You're 20-year-old. How do you depress these things, mate?
Basically, there's a lever between the driver's legs. When you pull that lever, it will pull out these pins here. Basically, you need to pull it right on the finish line. If you're a little bit late, you don't know what can happen. It has a large spring inside, which also helps to just push it away from the wing and the wheelie bar, which is most important. Apart from that, it's brakes.
Now, some drivers prefer to pack their own chutes to make sure they come out. Luke, do you pack yours?
Definitely. If they don't come out, I've only got myself to blame, and it really only takes about 5 to 10 minutes to pack.
Time now for some two-wheel action, and it's pro stock motorcycle time. Queensland's Andrew Badcock up against Sam Skerry in the Dutch Master entry out of Campbelltown, South Australia. Sam Skerry, a definite character in pro stock motorcycle, and you'd have to think hot favourite for this one.
Well, he is the defending Australian champion, and he does have Trevor Birrell swinging the spanners, one of the most experienced guys in pro stock motorcycle competition. However, I'll use an old cliche in drag racing: anything can happen.
Look at the elbows right up, cranks it on, clutch out, and Skerry gets off to a great run and should go on with it. Badcock in all sorts of trouble. Skerry runs it through for victory. In fact, picks up a 7.79 at 271 Ks, beats an 8.50.
Daniel Petey now on another of the Suzukis. As a matter of fact, the majority of the field here is Suzukis.
Yes, comes up against Morris Allen. Nathan caught up with him in the pits prior to this one.
You know, some people just get it all. Good looks, charisma, and they get to race motorbikes. I don't know why I like Morris Allen.
Well, Nathan, I mean, it's very enjoyable. I guess, you know, looking back, you aspire through your career to be a motorcycle racer, and, you know, it's something we all look to strive to achieve in our life. And yeah, the opportunities come around, and I must say, I'm enjoying it immensely. My grandfather has been involved in motorcycling, so between there's 3 generations now with myself racing. My grandfather raced at the Isle of Man TT in 1939. So unfortunately, I wanted to go off and play tennis, but you know, they had other ideas. And I get to enjoy many forms of motorcycle racing, but the thing I enjoy about drag racing is that's those split-second decisions that you've got to make. Everything is based, it's condensed into that 7 seconds down the quarter mile, and you know, everything just has to be executed accurately and precisely. And you know, I think some people don't quite realise that, you know, the consistency that's required in riding these bikes, that, you know, they are technical and they require so much more focus and concentration, even though it's over a shorter period.
Yes, Morris, the winner of the winner of the Nationals. Can he be the winner of the Summer Nationals here at Western Sydney? Daniel Petey with nothing to lose, and I wouldn't think too much pressure.
Yeah, certainly Morris has been the informed competitor in pro bike at the moment, but these conditions have caught a lot of people off guard. They are so tricky. I cannot stress how much the heat plays around, not only with the racetrack, but with the tune-ups on these bikes.
Petey closest to camera. Allen on the outside. Allen gets off to a great run, but Petey's got him early. Can he go on with it?
Yes, Daniel Petey with a bike length, and that makes it 2 on the finishing line. He gets the win. 7.81 beats a 7.90. Morris Allen wasn't quick enough anyway. He lost it on the start line, and the bike just didn't have the goods.
What a result for Petey in the K&N lane. Densmore now up against Nev Langley. Densmore closest to camera as we take a look. Beautifully turned out bike.
Neville Langley's bike just stalled in the Burnout. Now in drag racing, once the bike has started and moved forward under its own power, it is deemed to be in the starter's hands. If it stops, you are not allowed to restart it. And you can see the ANDRA officials now starting to say, listen guys, your bike has stalled, you can't start it again. I think Damien Densmore's going to get the solo pass here.
Oh, Langley will be absolutely dirty on that one. Beautifully turned out bike of Densmore. He gets a solo pass. Should use it to his advantage to try and get some R&D in here, but he shuts down early.
Shut it off early and still rolls to an 8.07 2.29. So not sure why he didn't run it through. As you said, Wade, he could have used it to his advantage to test it. And Neville Langley obviously very upset with that as Jason Lee comes out now.
Beautifully turned out Suzuki out of Adelaide. A lot of these bike riders from South Australia. Callum Goodeasy from Victoria on the Suzuki GSXR.
Both these guys with the later models GSXR body styles with the pod style rear end. Looks like something out of an Aliens movie, but they are beautiful looking bikes indeed. Just waiting for Lee now to bring the bike forward into stage. You can see now he's in. Watch as they come out, how they sit up to get maximum traction over that rear tyre.
Gadesi coming. Lee looks like he might have this. Gadesi, though, just in the end would have got the nod. A 785, 271 k's an hour beats a 792. Lee goes out the door, but look how close it was. Gadesi doing the job in Pro Bike. Time now for some junior dragster action. This is cool. All the way from Kingsley in Western Australia, Lawrence Adamos obviously sees a big future in this venue. Robert Adams from Queensland.
Dialed in with an 860. These things for kids aged between 8 and 16 years of age. And would you believe that these engines can rev to 10,000 RPM? Based originally on a 5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton, by the time people are finished with them, we're getting up to 30 horsepower. These things are quicker than a HSV Commodore to half track. They only run to 8th mile, and I think Adams has got this one in the bag.
It's very hard to understand. There's an 865 for Adams. It's hard to imagine that they would be quicker than the clubby, but I've heard that said several times.
We think they just did 120 kilometres per hour to half track. I mean, they are very highly tuned lawnmower engines and very, very quick. If you're a young kid wanting to go drag racing, they certainly sharpen the senses of a young racer. Solo pass here now for Chris Hargreaves. He's going to make his way into the final and runs a 912 on a 925 dial-in. So goes a little bit too quick. He'll adjust that for the final.
High Performance World bringing us super stock action for the first time on the show. Colin Lloyd in the immaculate Pontiac Firebird. First one to light up, man, some good-looking cars. Bruno Cavallo also in the Firebird. We are now about to introduce you to the world of indexes, so pay attention.
Yes, indexes are basically a performance barrier or guideline, if you like, for the different types of cars that run in Superstock. And believe me, there is a big variety. All of them run different sort of engines, different sort of modifications, so they have an index system. Now, if you run under the index, you don't lose like you do in a dial-in, but it allows a little bit of equality in the competition. This time, though, Bruno Cavallo with a strong win, 843, 252 kilometres an hour. Just having a look at the replay here, looks like Colin Lloyd may have had a problem in the top half of the racetrack. They were side by side, and Cavallo just pulled away, gets a very comfortable win.
Great looking cars. And how about Jim Rowley's immaculate HSV Club Sport with an index of 973. The Western Filters sponsor. That looks like it's straight off the street. Apart from the scoop, of course.
Yes, this car running a category which involves a fair few lack of modifications. Nick Zarakis' Ford Probe is pretty much a pro stock car with a slightly smaller engine. So we have a highly modified car up against a less highly modified car. You'll see the car in the near lane will get an advantage off the start line. The other one will have to chase him down, but it doesn't matter way.
Light. Zarakis. Unfortunately, the Ford Probe will run through tough, but Rowley, been around a while, knows there's no point pushing it through. There's the win, a 973. Look at the difference of an 832. That red light making all the difference.
Yeah, and Zarakis still got off the throttle, but a red light by 3/100ths of a second is very tough. Have a look on the replay. Geez, it's hard to pick. It looked right, but just came up 3/100ths of a second too soon for Zarakis. And he puts Jimmy Rowley into the semi-finals of High Performance World Super Stock Eliminator. Les Hines comes out now. He's got an index of a 919 for his Chevy Camaro. And he will be pretty tough to beat. Les has been around for some time.
Tony Carosio in the Pontiac with an index of 1037. There is the Speed Pro Demolition entry up against the Comp Engines machine. There's some great looking bodyworks there.
Yeah, they are very tough looking cars, both of them pretty much similar to what you'll find off the factory floor as far as their outlines are concerned. However, what you find under the bonnet is a lot different as they get the wheels in the air.
Very big wheelies off the line too. I noticed their index is dialed in on the telemetry at the line. In the end, it's a pretty cruisy win, a 909 at 217, beats a 1046 at 212. Time now for semi-final action. Pro Stock Motorcycle Sam Scarey from Campbelltown, South Australia, aboard the Suzuki, which seems to be the choice of a lot of riders. Daniel Petey, who took care of Morris Allen in the first ride, his confidence will be high.
Yeah, I think the Suzukis have had the most development on them. They seem to be the engine of choice. Of course, the chassis aren't a Suzuki. It is all about the engine. Kawasaki's being 2-valve per cylinder rather than the Suzuki's 4-valve can run slightly bigger engines at 1500 cc's, but it seems to me that the best power per weight per engine size certainly does seem to be the Suzuki.
Scary, furthest from camera position. There is the immaculate Dutch Master entry up against Petey. Scary got off beautifully, but I think Petey's got him covered early.
I think you're right. I think Daniel Petey may be making his way into the final. Scary doesn't have anything in the top end of the racetrack, and a 771 beats a 782.
He's pumped.
Petey is pumped.
As you would be. What a great result to put Scary and Allen away in the one day. That's a big result for him.
Side by side to about half track, and from then on, Petey just seemed to have something extra in reserve. He pulled the extra gap out. He goes on to get the win and will go into the final.
Yeah, look, I'd like to thank Forcycle Dyno Performance, Rideau Gem Shack from Gladstone, McCrew, Peter, Owen, my father Ken and Rideau. We've all put in a big effort this weekend, and thanks Andrew for looking after us. Thanks, mate.
Good luck in the biggie.
Thank you.
Well, Densmore now with little to lose. Like Petey, he's been advancing his way through. I do like the big Aussie flag on that. Callum Gadesi, what an immaculate machine as they kind of walk them up the stage after their burnout.
Yeah, you have to be very precise with the way you ride these motorcycles. You don't want to overheat the clutch in the burnout, so they do pretty short, sharp burnouts, get them into stage relatively quickly. You have to be very, very accurate with the gear changes. A lot like pro stock car. You really have a fine margin of error when riding these motorcycles, and it may only happen in 7.5 seconds, but it certainly takes a lot of skill to ride these bikes.
Look at Gadesi. He was ready 5 or 6 seconds earlier than Densmore. He was good to go.
Both bikes into stage now, and a red light for Gadesi. He's thrown it away. Densmore gets a berth in the final. He'll be absolutely stoked. Callum, let's see what he throws away. He runs 771, but it's no good. The 778 gets the win. Callum Gadesi a little too accurate. You said he was ready to go, Wade. He sure was. He red lighted his way out of this, puts Densmore into the final.
What I run? That's my fastest pass ever.
778, mate. You're through to the final. Well done.
Oh, thanks. Look, I'd really, I'd like to thank Forcycle Dyno Performance from Boyne Island, Butchell Engineering, Joe Marshall, and special thanks to my crew, my wife Annie, Barry and Kelvin. Thanks a lot, fellas.
2 Queenslanders at it, mate. May the best one win.
Forcycle Dyno bikes too. That's what we want. Thanks a lot, fellas. Thanks.
Stay with us. There's more after the break from the Western Sydney Summer Nationals. Welcome back to the grand opening of Western Sydney International Dragway as we see Johnny Cowen sitting there ready to fire up. It's High Tech Oil's Top Fuel Eliminator semi-final time. Terry Sainty in the Gulf Western Oils Dragster. Big burnout. He's up against the young gun, Johnny Cowen, in the Rocket Dragster. Expect a big burnout right here, which he does. The Sainty family run their own motor program. Here's Nathan with more.
They may all look the same, but there's something very different about the Gulf Western Oils Top Fuel Dragster. It's the engine. Other Top Fuel cars run a push rod, fairly old design hemispherical engine. This is the Sainty billet 3-valve. It employs relatively new technology. It's single overhead cam, 3 valves per cylinder. It's all billet, which means it's all machined out of single solid bits of aluminium, making it very strong. And not only that, it's all made right here in Wentworthville, New South Wales.
Well, here comes Sainty now backing it up. This would be a mammoth victory if he could pull one off here on the Rocket team. Sainty very much, I don't want to use the term backyard, but certainly a domestic operation in a lot of terms. That there is factory backed if you could have such a thing in Australia.
Yes, the Cowen family certainly put a lot of commitment into their drag racing, but as do the Sainties. I mean, everything practically on this car is built by the Sainty Speedworks team. Now, being home built, they do have had in the past a couple of reliability issues, but they've got on top of it with some new cam gears, and they can now start leaning on the tune-up.
Let's have a look at Johnny Cowen, 24 years of age from Chiswick. Look at that ET, a 478. He hasn't been around that long. 2 Top Fuel wins, including the Nationals, and he's the current Top Fuel points leader. What's he just doing there with his left hand?
He's adjusting the fuel pressure, making sure the fuel pressure remains relatively consistent around the 50 or 60 pound mark at idle. It has to be at a certain level to get enough heat in the engine. When they go into stage, he pulls the fuel pumps on completely. A lot of raw fuel pumps out of the pipes. You can hear the engine note actually change. Wheels in the air for Johnny Cowen, and it's going to be a Cowen show all the way.
Yes, hardly a perfect run as he threw the blower belt towards the end and smoked the tyres almost half the track. A 4.99 at 384. It still beats at 5.40. Sainty running a faster overall time.
Only 240 mile an hour for Johnny Cowen because it started to smoke the tyres. You can see Sainty disappear into the background and just short of the finishing line. It over-revved, threw the blower belt off, and Johnny Cowen forced to coast through at only, would you believe, 240 miles per hour.
Johnny Cowen, a 4.99.240, mate. Well done. You're through to the final.
Well, they're pretty good. Wheels in the air and a carried it pretty far out there, man. And started smoking the tyres and tossed the belt off the things. So, hey, we got the win.
The Sandoz Cranes team are up next. Nathan's in the pits catching up with them right now.
In Top Fuel, you may know the names Reed and Cowen, but there's one that's been around just as long and with nearly as much success. Sano Raposado and his team have been at the forefront of Top Fuel for 26 years, and at this event, their commitment to the sport has doubled.
It started probably in 1966, and I started off with an EH Holden, and from then on I sort of step up bit by bit.
Well, basically, Sandoz crew chief Glenn Miger's been working with him on and off since 1990, and I've known Glenn since I first drove funny cars back in 1980. I knew that they were purchasing this car, which was Joe Amato's car that he ran last year with Darrell Russell driving. So he asked if I'd be interested in coming down and do this one race deal for the opening of the new track here in Sydney, and it was just a good opportunity and everything just came together.
Back in the driver's seat after a short break from the team is Queensland-based Pommy Steve Reed.
Bit of a learning curve or just riding a bike?
Oh no, it was, we had a 60-foot pass here in Smoker tyres when on the test day out here, which got you back into it. It's very difficult because now it's got sort of horsepower back in it. When you smoke the tyres, you've got to get off the throttle real quick, and you don't really know that it's doing it until you notice that the motor's sounding a bit harsh. Not having used to, I mean, we haven't smoked the tyres in about 9 years, so it's a new experience to get back to that again.
I wanted to do this to run to the cars when Eastern Creek opened up, and that's what I done.
Tragically, in 1990, Santo's son Louis was killed in a Top Fuel accident at Willowbank. Although the pain of such a loss is immeasurable, Santo continues to race in memory of his son.
Everything I do is all for Louis, and I think the team was also the boys in the team. They're doing also part for Louis because, you know, if Louis would have been here today, it would have been like this or better.
Man, that is a passionate man. The tears still welling up in his eyes just talking about Louis.
Yeah, Santo puts a lot into drag racing, and it certainly has shown here at the opening of Western Sydney International Dragway with 2 cars, and one of them is the best of the best. The latest bitch from the US with a US driver who's very experienced to boot. Luke Shepherd, not much of a burnout for him. They did have problems in qualifying where they hurt an engine and actually had to bring one up from Melbourne overnight. Possibly the tune-up has hurt the engine in that win over Jim Reed. That's a real shame.
Let's take a look at Mike Dunn, 47 years of age from Wrightsville, USA. Look at that ET, a 449 at 331 miles an hour. That is incredible. A motorsport TV announcer for ESPN as well. And there it is, in memory of Louis. We get set. I do like the Go Fast black wheels on the back of that dragster.
Very tough looking car. Is it tough enough to get around Luke Shepherd? We're not sure whether he has a problem or not. Well, Dunn goes on his own. Shepherd with some dramas. Let's see what Dunn can put on the boards. A 481 with a 7. 463 kilometres an hour, and that is an incredibly tough pass. 481 in these warm conditions. This team is signalling that they are very tough for the final. Have a look at the right stacks there, Wade. It is still dropping cylinders though.
And the distortion in that right rear tyre was pretty awesome as well. Towards the end it throws the belt, it matters not. It's anything crab walking off the line.
Yes, Mike Dunn, an incredible pass. It definitely had it 1 cylinder out, so it ran a 481, theoretically on only 7 cylinders. An incredible speed as well. 289 miles an hour, but problems, unfortunately, for Luke Shepherd. Let's go to Mike Dunn.
We spoke earlier, mate. Nice to go through to the final. How was that run?
Oh, it wasn't bad. I mean, it left good, and then it watched Johnny Cowen spin the tires a little bit out there in the middle, and it felt like it got a little loose, grabbed the brake a little bit, and then we lost the belt just before the finish line, slowed us down a little bit. took the line off. So, but all in all, it was running pretty good till the belt come off.
Should be an interesting one. The belt came off with Johnny Cowen's car as well, so interesting that it happened to both cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. You're just out there spinning the tires. That belt just takes the abuse out there, and a lot of times they don't make it to the finish line. Just one of those things.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Time now for Super Street Eliminator now, and Paul Doblin, Ford Falcon XY with a dial-in of 12.51. It is a barrier that they have to run, or a margin that these guys have to run inside, correct?
Super Street is for sedan cars running between 11.0 and 12.99. So if you can run quicker than 12.99 or no quicker than 11.0, you run in Super Street Eliminator. It's a dial your own category, which means you nominate a time you think your car will run. If you go quicker than that, you lose. In this case, a 12.48 on a solo pass was quicker than his dial-in, and Doblin may choose to adjust it for the next round.
Got a Ford action here, Chris Papadopoulos there, and oh, you got to love this, the Monaro mate, Michael Bailey. What a great looking Monaro.
Bailey was the #1 qualifier in Super Street Eliminator, dialed in with 11.10, Papadopoulos with 11.00, so there'll be a slight advantage for the Monaro off the start line, Papadopoulos to do the chasing. Doesn't matter though, red light for the Monaro.
And that's not good at all. Papadopoulos can just run the thing through though. Does he have to stay within that margin, or doesn't matter what he runs?
No, first or worst rule applies, so unless he crosses the centre line, which he doesn't, he gets the win. 10.99 at 198 kilometres an hour to move into the final.
Ticket to Ride brings you the modified Eliminator right now. Paul Warden, a Ford 540. Ticket to Ride is a trip, basically a fan tour to the 50th NHRA Nationals at India. They reckon that's going to be an awesome event.
Yes, up against Brian Martin, dialed in with an 8.38. Modified Eliminator is for open cars.
That is a mean-looking sucker.
Tough-looking car, good crowd in the house, and a great paint scheme on that car. Modified Eliminator is a die-your-own category for open cars that don't quite fit into the other categories of championship drag racing. And being die-your-own, it means you can run pretty much whatever you like. In this case, we've got some pretty big extremes. We've got a 6.5-second supercharged dragster up against an 8.5-second naturally aspirated dragster. And I tell you what, there's a big performance difference, but being dial-your-own, it all comes down to consistency and ability to run as close as you possibly can to that dial-in.
Martin gets the advantage early, and Ward now to try and run him down. Looks like he may do it.
Big top-end charge from the dragster of Ward, a 6.48. He goes too quick, but he loses anyway. An 8.45 for Martin sees him into the final. Have a look at this margin. You'd think, well, Martin's got it easily, but have a look at the top-end charge from Ward, 330 kilometres per hour. He gets the win. Graham Frawley now with the solo pass into the final. He's dialed in with an 8.40. He'll use his solo pass to test that dial-in to see whether he needs to make any changes to it. You can change your dial-in round by round, and he'll stop the clocks and have a look what he runs. 8.404 on an 8.40 dial-in. He'll be making no changes before the final.
High Performance World Superstock semi-final action now. Les Hines and the Chevy Camaro had a very good run before up against Jim Rowley in the Western Filters Clubby. Rowley didn't have to do a great deal in his qualifying run, but got some work to do now.
The thing about index racing is if you run quicker than your index, you don't lose, but you actually get penalised. You suffer a time penalty for the next round of eliminations. Les Hines went quicker than his 9.19 index in the last round, therefore his index is now dropped down to a 9.14. What that means is basically he gets less of an advantage on the start line than he had in the round before. Jim Rowley leaves first, Hines to do the chasing. Now that he's up against Jim Rowley, who runs very consistently and right on his index, it makes it very hard to beat him, and he's not going to in this case.
Yeah, Rowley's going to put Hines well and truly away. A 9.68 beats at 9.26, so the win to Rowley in the club sport over Hines.
Hines ran a lot slower than he did in the previous round. Bruno Cavallo with the solo pass here into the final. He's electing, by the looks of things, not to run it down the racetrack. All he had to do was put the car into stage and take the green light, and he's going to back it up and wait for the final when it comes up very shortly.
I guess that'll save the guys some maintenance work prior to the final.
Speaking of maintenance, that's exactly what's going on in the top fuel pits now as the Rocket K&N team and the Santos Cranes team prepare for their final. They actually pull the blocks right down to a bare block, take the rods, pistons out. They do a complete clutch rebuild, and a hell of a lot of work goes on between the rounds of racing.
Well, we spoke to a couple of the leading drivers in Top Fuel, asked them what do they think about this awesome Western Sydney venue.
this is the best thing that's ever happened to Australian drag racing. Probably international racing as well, because it proves for not a lot of dollars, and thank you to the New South Wales government for supplying the dollars to build it, but it will give people all around Australia and across Europe probably, show that for not a lot of dollars you can put a facility together that is world class, and hopefully it will attract more overseas competitors.
I think the facilities were first rate. I mean, when I was over here in 1981, I mean, you guys were probably back then 15, 20 years behind in the facilities from what we had over the States at that time. But now with this track here that Jim Reed and his people have put together, you guys are lacking for nothing. This is a very good facility.
This is a non-profit facility. Every dime made here goes back into making it a better facility. And only time's going to tell that we've been telling the truth. Stick about, you're going to see massive improvements here over the next 2 or 3 years.
Dragster Australia now bringing us the junior dragsters. Gee, some great looking cars.
Yes, Chris Hargreaves up against Robert Adams. Robert Adams is #1 in Australia and has also been racing in the US with a lot of success. Actually finished second in a national event in Texas. A very experienced competitor and one of the quickest cars in the field. Actually qualified in #1 with an 8.51. These cars cannot run quicker than 8.50 over the 8th mile. Otherwise, they are disqualified from competition. Adams has to do the chasing. We saw that Hargreaves went quicker than his dial-in in the first round, and he does it again. The win, an 8.570 on an 8.570 dial-in. Great race.
Streetcar Fabrication bringing you your Super Street final now. It's an all-Ford affair. There is Chris Papadopoulos in the Ford Falcon XF with a dial-in of 11 even. He comes up against Paul Doblin, the Ford Falcon XY.
You see Paul Doblin's adjusted his dial-in since the last round. He's dropped it to a 12.47, which is what he ran on his solo pass. So maybe that's been a good opportunity for him to test the car out. Papadopoulos ran into the 10s, however, he wants a little bit up his sleeve.
You saw there Doblin getting away as he could, but red light has flown on Papadopoulos, so Doblin will just run it through and take the Western Nationals win.
You can see him inside the cabin already pumping the air. He can see on the big K&N scoreboard at the end of the racetrack that he's got the win, and you can see him inside the cabin elated, winning the Summer Nationals. He still runs a 12.5. He would have got it anyway, but you see Papadopoulos, too quick, red lights himself out of the final.
Ticket to Ride modified final now. Brian Martin with a dial-in of 8.42 up against Graham Frawley.
Graham Frawley has dropped his dial-in to an 8.39, but Brian Martin with not much of a burnout. The engine sounding very rough indeed, and you can see the flame, and it's actually dropping cylinders. He's blipping the throttle trying to get this thing to rev up, and it sounds to me like it's running very, very rough indeed. I hope he manages to clear it before he pulls the car into stage.
Frawley was amazingly close to his dial-in before.
Oh, Martin's rolled through stage. Martin has a problem. Frawley's into full stage. Martin is not. He's not backing the car up. You can see he's signaling, just send him, I'm going to go. So Graham Frawley, by default, wins the Summer Nationals.
Well, Martin will be devastated with that, taken out of it before it even really began with engine problems.
Let's have a look at his time. Well, he runs an 8.39 on an 8.39 dial-in. Graham Frawley, a class act here, winner of Modified Eliminator.
High Performance World Superstock final time now. Rowley up against Cavallo. You'd have to lean a little bit towards Bruno Cavallo for this one, but Rowley's so consistent, as you said, Nathan.
Rowley's been in a lot of finals lately. I think he was in the final of the Nationals. I think he was in the final of the Winter Nationals, which I believe he won, and he is very, very consistent. However, Cavallo is more capable of running under his index of an 8.56. I think possibly the Firebird has a little bit of a performance advantage over the HSV Club Sport, but I tell you what, if looks mean anything, that car's already won.
It looks fast just sitting there, doesn't it? This will be a big one. Rowley closest to camera. Cavallo outside lane. Rowley off. Oh, Cavallo's got in a big run at the end.
Both cars get away cleanly. No red lights. Cavallo with a top-end charge. Bruno's going to get there and get there comfortably. 8.45 at 258 kilometres an hour. A 9.67. Jimmy Rowley drove it out the back door, but it wasn't enough. Have a look at this on the start. Look at the way that that car just launches and dives down the racetrack.
No messing around, was there? Didn't crab walk. It just did exactly what it had to do. Got him down the track as fast as it could. And Cavallo, great drive.
Yeah, Bruno with just more top speed and a great drive to win the Summer Nationals in Superstock.
Pro Bike final coming up. Morris Allen, though, is going to give us a bit of an insight into what it's like to ride these things at over 250 kilometres an hour.
And everything starts from the burnout and obviously comes forward. I mean, the burnouts have to be executed so that the clutches don't get too hot. You have to bring them into stage quickly. You need to have them on full throttle so that obviously, we don't back off throughout the run. They maintain a certain RPM through the whole length of the racetrack. Each gear has to be shifted according to the shift light at an accurate shift point set by the crew chief. It's very critical for these engines that they do get shifted. If you short shift, for example, well, it loads the engine up with more fuel. I don't like that, and through the finish line, they tend to obviously drop cylinders and hurt the valve train and the cylinder head components. So, the accuracy of these bikes in the way that you need to, I suppose, deliver each time you ride the bike is so important and critical that, yes, consistency is vital. They move around a fair bit, so it's important to be smooth, keep it in a straight line, which may look easy, but it's bloody hard at the best of times, I've got to tell you. Other than that, if you get them up on the wheelie bars, front wheel in the air, hey, they're a buzz.
I'm a big fan of the green sunglasses, I got to tell you. Here comes Daniel Petey. This is the giant killer right here. Densmore had it slightly easier with the red light favouring his progress in that previous run, but Petey, what can he do?
Well, Petey was I think the number 2 qualifier, so he certainly has had the performance. I think Densmore's been the man most surprised to be in this situation. He had the solo in the first round, he had a red light in the semi-finals. Now he actually has to race for the win, and if he can pull this off, this will be amazing.
I'd love to see his face if he dials it faster time than his previous run, because he was pretty happy about that. Looking over just to check what Petey's up to. This will be a good battle.
Both these guys good mates as well. Both of them 4-cycle dyno race engine bikes, so they have a little bit of involvement, and I think Petey has a lot of help on the Densmore bike to get this thing tuned up and ready for racing. Both of them rolling forward into stage. Watch for the twist of the grip up on the rev limiter. Petey's got the edge. Densmore's doing the chasing, but I think it's going to be Daniel Petey all the way.
What a great race it was. Petey holds on. Densmore leading over to keep it stabilised. A 766 beats a 775. Petey will be ecstatic.
Petey, the winner of the Summer Nationals, but Densmore certainly had a go at this one. Have a look at the bike in the far lane as he gets towards the top end of the racetrack. He really started to ride it. Look at him lean off the bike. You can't actually turn the handlebars. You have to lean your body off the bike. Densmore rode hard, but Petey gets the win.
Very good. Yeah, I've got to thank my crew. They've just put a huge effort in this weekend. Owen, Peter, my father Ken and Rido. My sponsors, Rido's Gem Shack from Gladstone, 4-cycle dyno performance, and Sydney International Raceway. Thank you.
They do a lot of work on this bike, so I'd like to really thank Daniel and Ken Petey for all the work. They put the engine together, they tune it for me. It's from 4-cycle dyno and performance. A pit crew, Kelvin and Barry, and my wife. Craig Hartman from Quality Dent Repairs, Joe Marshall, Paul Bushell. Without all those guys, we wouldn't be here, so thanks a lot. No, he's still my best mate.
Top Fuel final is about to come out. Nathan Prendergast is in the pits and he's talking clutches.
It's one thing to make 7,000 horsepower, but the real trick is getting all that power to the ground. You can't just stab the throttle and hope that the rear tyres are magically going to stick to the racetrack. It takes finesse and precision timing to dance a Top Fuel car down the quarter mile.
With up to 5 plates and an array of 18 fingers, the clutch in a Top Fuel car is a specialised and super tough piece of equipment designed to harness and control the enormous power these cars develop. Operating like a giant hill start, the clutch is fed in gradually as the car moves down the track via a hydraulic thrust bearing that restricts the movement of the fingers and therefore delays clutch lockup. This delay is set via a highly complex set of pneumatic timers that fire at precise increments so as to feed in just the right amount of power at the right time.
It's optimum to have the clutch completely locked up by 1.8 to around 2.5 seconds, but differing factors like track conditions and engine performance can vary the exact operation, creating a very tricky tuning equation for the crew chiefs.
Time now for your high-tech oils Top Fuel final. This will be a beauty. The Californian veteran Mike Dunn up against Johnny Cowen. the young Sydney kid who'd be Johnny come lately in Dunn's eyes.
Mike Dunn, very experienced, has run both funny cars and Top Fuel, has been a winner of 10 national events in the NHRA in both categories, and it's very fitting that these two meet in the final. They were #1 and #2 qualifier. They are, by all rights, the best two Top Fuel cars in the field, and it's fitting that they're in the final together.
Looking for a big burnout from both these guys now as they come in front of this packed house at Western Sydney. And bagging them up. You see Andrew Cowen just stepping out of the way before Johnny lit him up. Look at the crowd in the house. The atmosphere is electric. Would you lean towards the experience of Dunn or the fact that it's Johnny in his hometown?
Mike Dunn has been exceptionally good behind the wheel. A lot of the times that car has got down the racetrack purely on Mike Dunn's ability behind the wheel. He has a tendency to ride the brake as the car travels down the quarter mile. He can sense when it's starting to spin the tyre. He gets on the brake and he gets it down the racetrack. Johnny Cowen, however, if he wins this, he will get the hat-trick. There's also a lot of rivalry between the Dunn family and the Cowen family. Johnny's brother Andrew actually took Mike Dunn's seat in the Darrell Gwynn Top Fuel Dragster in America a number of seasons ago, and Mike Dunn would certainly like to get the win over the Cowens.
This will be an awesome battle. Dunn in the far lane, Cowen closest to camera. The High-Tech Oils Top Fuel final.
7,000 horsepower. The new Santos Cranes Top Fuel Dragster is the latest from the US. The Cowen car also the latest gear from the US. Plenty of experience between both crews and both tuners. It's going to come down to who's got it right on the night.
Pride, a big factor here, Nathan.
Bit of a staging duel going on between the two Top Fuel cars. Johnny Cowen, you can see, is on the high side. There's a lot of fuel pumping out. You cannot overheat the clutches on these cars or the engines. Dunn is in, Cowen's in. Dunn smokes the tyres and Johnny Cowen is going to get the win. He throws the belt. Can Dunn catch him? No. Johnny Cowen gets the win.
Yeah, 5:38 at 2:99. Well, look at that, a 5:50 at 4:29 for Dunn. Cowen does the job, but it was a nail-biter at the finish.
I think the Santos team just put a little bit too much horsepower on this thing on the start line. You can see immediate wheel spin. It smokes the tyres. What a drive job from Dunn, though. Two steps it. That's what Jim Reed should have done in the first round and then started to chase him down. Johnny Cowen, though, had the setup, the car with a nice set of header flames. Then just past half track, smokes the tyres, throws the blower belt off. Mike Dunn chases him down, but just doesn't catch him.
Man, couldn't have been any more drama. We take a look at the rocket on board right here. As you said, beautiful flame, and then boof, out she goes. But out goes Dunn. Johnny Cowen, the Summer Nationals winner.
Win or lose?
Did you win or lose?
Yeah.
An Aussie win, mate. The first one, a history maker. Johnny Cowen, well done. You came through with a win.
Well, that's the third time in a row, and bit of a staging duel there, and we had some fun. So I'm happy, thank you.
Mate, your brother said that beating Mick Dunn was a, well...
Great race, Mark.
I think he called it a done deal.
Done deal, man.
I actually smoked tires right off the starting line, and he got a pretty good jump out there. And, you know, then he broke down track, and finally got hooked up and just ran out of racetrack. You know, he beat us. Good job. You know, just a good race, the way it goes.
Yeah.
Our car's been consistent all week, and just didn't expect it. We kind of thought it might spin the tires down track, but it spun right off the starting line.
Great to see you down here. I know that fans appreciated seeing someone of your calibre out here. Would you come back?
Oh yeah, I'd come back if I get the invite and I got the time. I love it down here. This is a great country, great people. They treat us very well, and this team's a good team, so I would do it. Yeah.
The brothers Cowen pretty happy with the whole affair, as well they might be. Well, that rounds out our coverage from today, but on next week's edition of Speed Week, there'll be plenty more from the Western Sydney International Dragway Summer Nationals.